Alright, hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you've been following this series so far, then in our last video you saw what we did. We arranged the animation for our main character, which is good for us. Now in today's video we're going to set up the proper jump, which we were having trouble with in our last video, and also we're going to start working on the obstacles which our main character is going to be jumping over. So I have a boulder, a wooden spike, and I think an iron spike, also an iron spike. So that's the word I'm looking for. Right, so just quick recap. Let's play this game to see what we did last week. Now whenever we hold the 0 mouse button, it's going to play the jump animation, and when we release it, it's going to keep running. And that's a problem because that's not the behavior we are looking for. Rather, we want, if we click on the mouse button, we want the player to go above the floor level, which is a jump, and then return back and keep running down. So let's start with that by going into our scripts and then going into our player script. Now this is the code which we had for ourselves last week, but right now what we will do is we're going to make another private float, two actually. So this would be a float, and this would be my current position X. Yeah, so this should do, and then the next one would be my private float, and this would be my current position Y. So this is what I'm going to be using, and then for this input.get mouse button, I'm going to cut this. I'm going to clear this else statement because I'm not going to be needing it. Now what I want is, if I get this mouse button down, let's change this to down. I don't want to be holding it up and then the thing remains, my character remains on air. I would rather set this to down, so it reads when we click, only when we click, not when we click and hold. This is what the mouse button down would do. Now what I want, if this button is clicked, is to make a reference to my transform dot position, where I'm going to set this to. So since I don't know the current position, we need to go back into Unity and check that. So let's get into Unity and then let's remove this maximize on play and play the game. Right, so with the game on now, let's click on my player, and then I'm going to record this position. So the first, for the X, it's going to be minus 13.49, and for the Y, it's going to be minus 2.48. So let me copy this for the Y, and then for X, minus 13.49. Right, so let's get out of this game, go back into Unity. This would be a new vector 2, and for my X it was 13.49, I guess. So let's set this current position X to minus 13.49, and for my Y this was minus 2.4, right, 2.48. So this should do. Now let's add an F to this as well as that. Let's add the unit so it doesn't give us an error. And then for this position now, it's going to be my current X position, and for the Y it's going to also be my current Y position. But for the Y position, I want to add a particular or a certain should I say jump to it, so it's going to be like a jump force. And I'm just realizing I made an error here, so let's add an L to this and also copy it. Let's copy this and let's make a new float variable, and this would be my jump. Right, so this jump is going to be set to 2. Let's make this 0 actually, since it's -2. 0 should be the perfect number for it. So for the y, I'm going to add +2 to it, or plus jump anyway. Our jump, which is 0, so we're going to add that and then multiply this by time dot delta time. So this should handle the jump. And if I'm actually just seeing this now. So let's make an if statement down here and say if our current position on the y, if this is greater than or equal to our jump, let's see. So if this is greater than or equal to our current, so if this is our current position dot y, or rather it should not be current position, this would be our transform dot position. If our transform dot position dot y is greater than or equal to our current mouse position on the y, then we want our jump to be true. So let's paste this. Oh, and that is the wrong one, so let's let me adjust this. So let's get an access to our anim, and this will be anim dot set bool, and that bool is our jump. And we're going to set this jump to true. And let's copy this line of code. So let's copy this and then have an else statement, and else this should be equal to false. So let's swap this jump to false, and let's save this and test our game. Alright, so without downloading, let's play the game. Alright, so rather than add this, we want to eliminate this current y position, so let's remove this, and this would strictly be our jump multiplied by time dot delta time. So let's go back now. So let's play the game now. First of all, hit maximize on play and play the game. Alright, so we're running, and you can see we're jumping. So once I hit the mouse button, we jump. And we're also running when we touch the floor, so we're making progress. That should be okay. And so the next thing we want to do is start making our obstacles. So our first one would be the boulder, so let's drag this into our scene so we can start working on it. Now this is it. Let's position this to be up. So let's set this to 0 on the X, so that will be somewhat in the middle. Now this is currently bigger than the player. As you can see, it will be difficult for him to jump over, so let's scale this down to 0.3, and also on the Y, let's set this to 0.3, and that should do. So let's drag this down to somewhere around there. Yeah, and then we can add a component which would be a collider to this. So this would be a circle collider 2D. Let's see. So we can reduce this radius from 1.97. Let me set it to 1.9. I think this should be okay. It makes it nice. So we have the boulder now, and then for it to start moving towards our player, we have to write a little bit of code. So right now we're going to create a script for this boulder, and so let's click on add components, and then let's type in boulder, enter, and then we'll create a new script for this. Right, so let's double click this to open it up in Visual Studio. And here it is. So for this now we're going to make two float values. The first would be a private float. This would be a private float. Let's call this movement. And we can set this to something like let me say 2 or -2 f, because it's going to be moving towards the left. That's why I'm making it a negative number. And the second one will also be a private float, and this would be my, let me call this rotation. Yeah, and this should do. So for my start, I'm going to set my rotation by default to 1. Okay, now for the update, all I want is for my game object to move towards the left to try to attack the enemy or crush him in this case. So let's make, or let's code let's write a line of code for that. So that will be transform dot position this would be equal to a new vector 2. Obviously it's a 2D game object, so it's vector 2. And for this vector now, what I want to do is I want my x value, so this would be my transform dot position dot x. I want to add my movement to this, obviously, so this would be plus my movement. I'm going to multiply this by time dot delta time, and for my y it's going to be 0. Nothing would change that. So with this, we're done with our first line of code, which is going to handle the movement towards the left hand side. Now for the rotation, because I don't want it to just, otherwise it's going to look like a picture moving towards the opposite side or the left hand side, and that is not what I want. So I'm going to write transform dot rotate, and for this rotation this would be equal to, let's take out the equal to sign. For this rotation, this is going to be let me call this for the x, we're not going to rotate it on the x. Same thing for the y, but for the z, which would give it the illusion of moving or rolling like a ball or a stone, cornerstone, we want this to be our rotation, which in our start we set this by default to 1f. So we want to be incrementing this value by 1 each frame which goes by. And with this, I want to multiply this by time dot delta time, and that should be all. So let's save this and go back into Unity. So once this gets done loading, let's select our boulder. Which we already have a script attached to it because we created the script under this. We can duplicate this a couple of times. Let's say twice. Drag this to the side. Same thing for this. Right, so this should be okay. Let's test the game now by hitting play. And you can see it's moving towards the player, but the position has been affected. Maybe it's just me, I forgot to add the position for the boulder, which is minus 2.55. And so let's do that in the transform dot position. Rather than set this to 0, let's change this to minus 2.55 f. Right, so this should do. And I think this would be best if we just make a float for it. So let's just call this a private float. And this is going to be my x position. Right, so let's set this to minus 2.55 f and replace this value with it. So let's call this x position. Then we can save this and go back into Unity. Right, so with this downloading, let's hit the play button. And you can see now it's in the right position. It's coming towards the player. So that is that. We haven't set this to collide with the player, or even if it's colliding, we didn't make any action to go on. So and it's just coming to me now. I didn't even make a die animation, so I'm going to consider doing that during the week, I guess. But with that, we've come to the end of this video for today. So I've shown you how to actually do this, and it's not difficult though. It's very easy, very simple. We've seen how we can put together our obstacle, and then we arranged our jump animation for today. So with that done, we've come to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you give me a like, comment down below if there's any problem or anything you want to see. I'm open to suggestions. Subscribe if you haven't done so. It will really help me out. That is a way of showing support. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope I see you in my next video.